You ever get a message that's super short, like it could fit on a postcard, but it's so powerful it feels like it could change everything? Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today. It's the second letter of John, one of the shortest books in the New Testament. And let me tell you, it's a tiny letter, but it packs a huge warning about a problem that is just as real now as it was 2,000 years ago.
So let me just ask you this, because it gets right to the heart of 2 John. What do you do when new ideas start to threaten the things your community believes most? I mean, just imagine you're part of this really tight-knit group, right? And then someone, maybe a total stranger, or maybe even one of your own, starts questioning the very foundation that holds you all together. That's the exact situation that sparked this letter.
Now, to really get this letter, we kind of have to step back in time. This was not an era of huge churches and established rules. The early Christian movement was more like a patchwork of small, scattered groups, and every single one was just trying to figure things out in a world full of conflicting ideas. It was a really risky and uncertain time to be a believer.
And into this fragile environment, you had what can only be described as a landscape of conflicting beliefs and sects. Teachers were constantly traveling from town to town, and each one had their own spin on the faith. And some of these new ideas were so out there, so radical, they threatened to completely change what it even meant to be a Christian. It was basically a battle for the soul of the movement.
So, right in the middle of all this chaos, this tiny letter arrives. It's not some long, complicated theological paper. Nope, it's more like a piece of emergency communication, a lifeline thrown to a community that's in a real crisis. It's a guide for how to get through some very dangerous waters, and its message is just as urgent now as it was back then.
So who's sending this urgent message? Well, tradition says it's John the Apostle. And who's he writing to? He addresses it to the elect lady and her children. Now, that might sound like a personal note to a family, but it's actually a pretty clever metaphor. The lady is most likely a local church, and her children are its members. So he's writing to an entire community that's right on the edge.
The letter lays out a really clear 2-part strategy for how to survive and stay faithful. And it doesn't just start with what to avoid. It starts with what the community has to actively do. And the foundation for everything else is to walk in 2 things, truth and love.
And here you can see how John weaves these 2 ideas together, so they're basically inseparable. He starts by telling the community he's so happy they're walking in truth, staying true to what they were taught. But then in the very same breath, he reminds them of the commandment they've known from day one, to love one another. You see, for John, truth without love is just empty, and love without truth is totally blind.
So here's the crucial point, and it's how the letter defines love. It's not just some warm, fuzzy feeling. The letter makes it crystal clear that love is an action. It's something you prove, something you demonstrate, by being faithful to the core commandments. In this way of thinking, real love and true belief are totally connected.
Okay, but this letter isn't all just about positive vibes. After laying that foundation of truth and love, John's tone takes a really sharp turn. He issues this stark warning, a spiritual red alert, if you will, about a threat that could tear the community apart from the inside out.
The letter gives this threat a name: deceivers and antichrists. And it's very specific about who these people are. We're not talking about folks with minor disagreements here. These are teachers who deny a core belief, that Jesus Christ actually came as a real physical human being. To the author, this wasn't just some small theological detail. It was a teaching that undermined everything.
So what's the game plan? Well, John's instructions are, wow, they are brutally direct. First, be vigilant. Watch out, pay attention. Second, don't lose all the progress you've made. And then comes the really tough part: do not welcome these false teachers into your homes, which, remember, were the sanctuaries of the early church. He even says not to greet them. The message is just crystal clear. You have to draw a hard line in the sand.
So, love your neighbor, but shun the heretic. It's a pretty jarring combination, right? It feels like a contradiction. So what's the end game here? What was John actually trying to accomplish with this pretty radical plan for community?
Well, the goal was simple: survival. It was all about maintaining doctrinal fidelity, sticking to the core beliefs, and spiritual integrity in a world that was just flooded with competing ideas about what was true. It was about preserving a faith that was both genuine and strong enough to last.
So, what can we take away from this ancient postcard-sized letter? Well, first, truth and love are 2 sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other. Second, real love isn't just a feeling, it's something you do. And third, and this is the hard part, sometimes protecting what you believe in means you have to build a wall. It's a timeless problem, isn't it?
How do you hold on tight to your convictions without losing your compassion?
And that brings us to the question that just echoes through the centuries, a question that's as relevant in our polarized world as it was in the first century. How can any of us, in any community, protect the things we hold dear, our beliefs, our values, our very identity, while still practicing radical love for the world? That's the challenge of 2 John. And really, it's a challenge for all of us.